My word is that all the Chatuam of the Eden and the Midbar is all comes down, boiled down to Lishon Hara. It all starts with the first one was Miriam, that's Lishon Hara and Moshe, and the second one was the Meragelim, so much genannt Kamisif, and then the third one was Koirach, was also Lishon Hara, right? How do I know? Because it says in the Zohar, but Rashi says it in, because the Gemara says that Koirach is Mechaber Lishon Hara, we learn it from Koirach and Shayches. Mizanas Koirach is really Lishon Hara.
You learn that you can't say Lishon Hara with Koirach?
We learn that Koirach is Mechaber Lishon Hara from the story of Koirach. That's what it says in Masechtas Yom. But the Morish tells Koirach is where we learn that Koirach is Koirach. And what's Lishon Hara? Koirach, I get Lishon Hara. Right? Soon we'll think about the Man Marif and how that's also Lishon Hara. That's this week's project. The last 3 weeks we're all about Lishon Hara. Now what's the I think
what grassroots revolution the health.
Oh, exactly. Now what's the Shorish of Lishon Hara? The Shorish of Lishon Hara is this Gemara that says in Sanhedrin, it's a Mishnah, that if you die and tells the person that I hold like you, but ma'as shruvi lechavayre is over and nisal chluch v'amechu v'nemar holuchroch magalas sad. In other words, there's a sad that says, what's the sad? It's true. You're not lying, right? The sad is that the psak halacha, the Torah Mishamayim, the Torah Moshe, is only the chrua between the 3 dayunim that have the right to be machru, and the halacha is achrab latis. That's the hanukas oilam, right? Right? And if you tell this to the guy outside, you're over on Lishon Hara. Because he cannot accept that. Because if you tell him that, he's going to say, so your whole thing that you told me is psak halacha, it's what you rabbis. Yeah.
Didn't the Pasha try that even Gal the other ones, the ones who were against him, and he was good? I guess he doesn't know, so he has no times against. That's I think.
That's he was good. You think he was right, and the other one is you think that. But
now he knows that they were the ones that were against him,
and therefore.
And at the
end of the day, it's machlokes nalocha.
Everyone's against him. He doesn't know.
Doesn't and therefore.
It's a weaker.
No, I'll show the next Gemara. That's clear. That's about this. Okay, this is my pshat. If you have another pshat, I always think of it like this. It's in other words, he's telling you the secret. What do you mean? He knows that it's not a secret that Bezdin works on it off, right? It's not a secret that there's sometimes machlokes in the Bezdin. Machlokes nalocha. It's not machlokes if he's a bad guy. Shala, there's that Lord Veim is the din. Like who's right? Which Baldin is right? And you're not allowed to tell him. We don't tell him that there's a das meat that holds like him. Maybe the reason you want to tell him is because you want to make him feel better. You want to be his friend. So it's but it's really a pekia in the whole idea of the Torah, that the Torah works by having a sod. But sod, by the way, literally means hisiantis. Literally means the tzamkim of the chacham. And this is where we get the language sod, because the tzamkim of the chacham we don't tell them outside. Because
this whole thing is coming from this. Someone who's not a Rambamist, whatever you want to call it. I don't mean the.
It's like
no. I'm saying he's one of the this whole idea that there's things that are useful, things like this means without Rambam.
No.
Either things that are directed by the Torah, they're not directed by the Torah. It's all Torah. There's no.
What do you mean? So this Torah was not invented by the Rambam. Everyone knows that there's Torah. The Mishnah says there's things that we don't. There's parshas in the Torah that we don't read in B'tzibur. Man, the Mishnah Chagiga. They're very traditional. The Rambam was probably megala way too much. If you want, he himself says that he's making guys last Lashem. He doesn't know clearly what the heter of the Rambam was to tell the secrets.
What is it? What time we read?
Parshas Bilu, whatever. All kind of things.
We do read it.
But yeah, one second. We're not talking anything. We somewhat. So now you're asking a good question. What happened that we lost this? But we still have it for Sardis. We still have the Mekabulim that, or nowadays maybe we don't. But at least till not so long ago, like the Ramban literally was makbid not to write Kabula, only Beremes, and then his Talmidim were Megala the Sod already. Or Talmidim, but maybe they didn't Megal the right Sod because they didn't really know. It's a good question. No, I don't think. I think that
there's a weakness here. We don't want to Megala.
Of course, no. Of course it is. Of course it is. How do you know? What's the Kvoid Elikim? What does it mean? It means that you're going to be Mazalz in it if I tell it to you, because you don't know how to appreciate it. You don't know how to interpret it correctly. That's the Kvoid Elikim Master Dova. And just like any other sod, the Zohar says that the Zohar in the beginning of the day makes kol choyme ma v'milad alma ma the malchus oilam hazeh have soides kol choyme the soides the Torah has soides. Why the malchus oilam hazeh have soides? Because I want you to know what's the code to the nuclear weapon, right? We kind of tell it to you like this, so you shouldn't realize this. Even the fact that it's a sod is hidden. I don't think there was ever another pshat in sod. There might be more things. In other words, it's all the same thing. It boils down to the fact that you're not going to understand it It really needs the effort and the level, the madraga, whatever you have to have. It's not stam psadin koved was psachiv has to do it. It means because if I tell it to you, you won't get it, and therefore I have to. Even if I do understand it, maybe someone else won't understand it, or maybe I don't understand it. I can. There's all of this whole thing. Of course, the reason we master even nikrev limit hagam is because we don't want it to know that even was shoychev and bilam and every touch is like this. I know that the Rishonim like to say that we don't cover up our sins. What we do, we definitely do. We don't tell the master with the eigel. We don't tell you that the Haran made the eigel. It's a Mishnah. Nobody's allowed to know that Haran made the eigel. You know that's a secret. One of the Sedes HaTorah. A Mishnah. This is not Chadish Torah. This is the Mishnah. We're allowed to say the master eigel shiny, not the master eigel where it says that a Haran made it. Because seriously, a Haran made the eigel. Hat schon zet rechnen, right? It's like there's a crown.
People can know something, but you don't say it. You don't have a fast, like.
They're not going to know, but that's for mention that don't know more. But we really translate the Torah to them, for them, because they can't read Hebrew, right? If you don't translate, they don't know. How would they know? We're way too advanced. We're already assuming that you know everything, and everything becomes a din. This is one of the funny things that's what I'm getting at the whole time. That's why I said we think that Gemara was written for us, but it was written for us as much as we are the Chavre Besa Medrash. But the Gemara is literally said it was literally the thing that you were not allowed to come in to hear unless you had a card from the Shemer HaPesach or Gamliel, right? What were they talking about by them? Why didn't he let him talking about it? Again, we're confused, right? Well, literally the Ikra Torah, and this Gamliel, by the way, generally Gamliel is Miyatzig, so the Meshech Chachma said this. Gamliel is Miyatzig, the real tradition of authority of Torah, right? He's the Rebbe Zaynikol. Again, upstart. The Meshech Chachma says this. We find this in a lot of places. The family of Rabbi Nekush was the last one of this family who Mamish turned it over and wrote the Mishnah for everyone. But there was Grace Ma'apchan made a big revolution. But the original families was that we're going to keep the title. We're not going to tell you all of it. And the Goyim still had many authorities. A lot of people had this idea that was going to get. I'm not sure that we ever lost this idea, even in Halacha. What we lost is that us people in Lakewood, we forgot that there's such a thing as Amaratzim. And the problem is that because we forgot that, this is the funny thing. Because we forgot that we became Amaratzim ourselves. But this is the funny thing. Because we forgot that there's Amaratzim, we became Amaratzim ourselves. Because we think all these things. No, but it doesn't. We start thinking that it really means the things that they told Amaratzim. And we start not realizing that the whole idea of having it. That's why I'm tried to talk about this difference. That the reason why we don't have everything from Amaratzim is so that Talmud Chum should allow themselves things that they don't allow to tell everyone. And since we don't have that idea at all, so we only tell them things that we can tell everyone. And they start honestly believing in it, sincerely. Taka this, it's taka true that over the Chum Chayiv Miser. The Gemara tells you that we telling you that because otherwise you're not going to take it seriously. So is it real or not? Yeah, it's real that you should be. The Chum are not crazy for saying all these. They want you to do that. They're right. But it's not really.
You don't give the meat. You don't give what do you call it? You don't give misa.
We are of course not. And you're also not really apikoris for saying ma'an la'chachomim. This is one of the biggest examples, right? You're not really apikoris for saying ma'an la'rabunam. No, because the Rambam. That's of course it says this. The Rambam was megal a lot of these sodas, but then in Lakewood you're not allowed to say this Rambam because but that's because Lakewood they forgot that they're not they're the chachomim. Or maybe they're not. But they should be. And if you're a chacham, you understand, of course. In other words, in the Bes Medrash, people are a lot more sharp with each other than anyone is allowed to ever know. This is what this guy, and that's what it's done. The next particular Gemara in Nedm says, it's going to tell him the Bes Medrash of Amir after 22 years with Megala Asad, and they threw him out of his Medrash. They said, Dain Gal Yerusa. That's the sipper that the Gemara tells seats of this Mishnah of Hoylech Rochel Megala Asad. Now, what was the thing that he said? Others going to fight the Bes Medrash like you're saying. Or he's taka said Halacha that this was Medrash passed, and they said, you know that most of the Medrash actually didn't hold of it. The only reason we made this Halacha was because someone insisted and we had to respect him. These are things that say in the Mishnah. There's not things that I'm making up. They were literally the power, the covet, and the things of between the Chacham and themselves. And it's true. The Olam in the end has to follow the Halacha. After all of those messy very messy, how do you say, procedures of creating the Torah.
Senate, what do you want to call it, right? It was more of a...
That's what the Senate, that's what's in it, that's what a Besmedrash, that's what a Besmedrash is.
Right, that's what?
Said but that's what a Besmedrash is, that's what a Besmedrash is. At the end of the day, some halacha comes out, whether it's halacha or shkuf words. At the end of the day, you tell people, this is what nisbared in Besmedrash. And if the people will know, it wasn't really nisbared, it was like 51 against 49, and like, wait, that's the whole thing?
That's what I'm saying, today it's not a real Besmedrash. Today it's not really about the Midrashim. They were just learning for state. No, it's Hakazoi. Unless you go, I don't know, maybe go to a place that's much.
I don't think that's entirely true.
No,
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. I don't think that the best.
Maybe when they sat in the beginning and they were making takonis with the tzibur. So at that point.
No, but it's maybe.
It's
maybe less formal. I don't think that's true.
No, I don't mean much about. I don't mean that.
It's less formal, but it doesn't mean that there aren't things that come out of the tzibur from some besmedrash. What are you talking about? Of course.
It's less formal. It's absolutely not formal. There's no formal thing at all.
Besides it, but there's still things that nobody's supposed to know. What do you mean? Where did the Talmud Chacham? Where did Talmud Chacham? And us ourselves, we don't realize. You're not allowed. Are you allowed? What do you mean?
When everybody
wegen the Eiref?
Son. Ja, het kind geen gemaakt. Hij had gedaan. The process it brings noch Reisnis. And then listen, Michael's on man. Michael's on this. He had to have experience in a Buddhist for the 50 years. He went ballistic.
But the Litvish Rabbanim also, the Litvish Rabbanim don't are just not truthful about it.
You cut the so great money. You know, it's 20 years ago. So I was like, I just think I should who cares? I mean, whatever. He was you have to see.
Of course. No, of course. Visa heißt der. What do you mean? What do I want to tell you? Yeah, I don't think that they're really different. I think that one of the funny things in yeshivas is that they really start to believe the lies that they tell everyone because they don't realize. The Chaim Brisker, for example, the Chaim Brisker when he was matik Agus Rav, never always skipped the Sharf Lashonos, the Anikra Sharf Lashonos, you know. And Chedisha Reb Chaim
didn't read like
and Chedisha Reb Chaim Velavi, it's printed without it. No, it's not only a mass.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you could look. He never copies. He just cuts out those language. Now, what's the pshat? What's going on here? Of course, if you read the Rav, and if you read any Rishonim, by the way, and also the early Achronim, they have no problem ripping Arani and read Shach. I underline whatever I find something interesting. The word of loy, hype gestoßen, lots gestoßen. Why should they that? Yeah, there's some of them are nicer, but. For the most part,
the most part was like
even the Bes Yosef. I found such a funny. Yes, I found such a funny shtickle Bes Yosef. Look, the Lachloik is the Midrash band and the Mishmeir Sabayis and the Reu, not the Beidik Abayis, and the Rashba Emfet. And he says, I know that the Rashba answers, but everyone knows that he himself wrote the Mishmeir Sabayis. There's kind of that is a teretz of the kasha. I think he's maigen on his shit because he's the Mechaber himself. It's such a funny shtickle. Like, clearly you didn't know. Like. You have three Rishonim. There's the Rash, Shittas and Rashba, and Shittas the Reu, and Shittas Mishmeir Sabayis for the Rashba from Zankash. Look, yeah, but I don't accept this teretz. He's the original guy. Of course he owns like that. And if you're in a Besmedrash, you know that you learn. Why is it so hard for us to understand that the Rav hacked on the Rambam? You ever went into Besmedrash? Every did the Chavris is a shoytam. That's normal, right? Definitely in Litvish yeshivas, they don't have any problem with. Reb Chaim didn't have a problem telling. I don't know. Maybe Reb Chaim stuff was a nice guy. I don't know. The Barnekottel didn't have a problem telling you you're amuris and such a stuck. Mama's going a key and Papa going a chamor. Whatever, like. Yeah, whatever. All kind of crazy, clueless. That's problem. And funny people. And this is what's so funny. And then these same people, they say shtickle gemura. Instead, it says in the gemura, kadnaim v'shucha v'mur milsen. They say things like this. Just you don't realize that you're in the same Medrash as them. You think that they wrote this to the Olim. Of course, he wouldn't say this to them. Of course, when you published your chief, he also cut out his chivas when you wrote to the Sibbe. Well, there's 2 minutes from the ganze Olim. But they see themselves as Namaratzim that are reading the Gemara as if the Gemara was written for them and an outside way. If the Gemara would ever thought that someone would read it outside, they would never write it. This is one of the reasons why they didn't write the Torah Sheba'al Peh. And over Makbran this, do not tell anyone that is Machloikas. And you see the Mishnah in Edis talks about this. Why do we write down the Das Yuchid? This is a big kasha on the Torah. You know that if we wouldn't have that, would have had the Rambam would have had a much easier time with the Karuim if it wouldn't be Machloikas in the Mishnah. And the Mishnah says, you know why we write it? Because maybe they were right. Because this is not written for the Halacha. This is a pshat, every tash from the Mishnah, that you might think that they were right? Next year. In other words, we're machriya. Bis the val is dachru. A lot of people think like this. Right? Maybe one day you'll look into it again. You'll decide that Das Yuchid is right. I don't want you to make a mistake. I don't want you to deny you that information that Ramai already thought like this. This is that the Mishnah in Idiyas. In other words, this is assuming that the Mishnah is not written for the Haman Am. It's written for the Talmud Chum that could understand it. To do all Mugavena Machloikas and kind of feel it's right to have up to Kim Tamulos. It's not.
But you should know the other day if I can.
It's a stira. The Mishnah seems to say that. Mishnah seems to say that, but that's not true. It really means like this. There's two pshutim in the Mishnah. The Mishnah seems to be soiser himself, and even the Mishnah. It's mind. Mine the beinet kim with all the shit. I know, but it really means this. It's a stira in the Mishnah itself what it exactly means, and this is what we tell everyone else.
It says, I know about it is Bechlal.
There's a
person could be machriya like a different one. Like
there's a machloik. There's a problem with that Mishnah, but that's one of the things that's going on there. You know what I mean? You see, for example, Nacham Mushal, and we read it so backwards because we forgot that we're reading the books. We're peeking into their inner world. We're not standing outside and. Wie sie kann schreiben an der Sache? Wie sie kann mitnacht ziehen, bevor reden wegen, weiß, Kien, was fliehen dort. I don't know, walking down this medish, you'll have to tell it. What's so hard to understand? That's life, that's how it looks. At home in this medish, they know that they're not that all these things go on there.
You think that they go from the Indian, you talking about?
Stop! No, that they say things that seem to be nonsense or stam, shtissim. The Miri said, that's the milste Besichses, I'm gesagt, yeah? And I told the people, and when people wanted to translate the Gemara, Mani Gedolech said that you can't, because what are we going to do with all these Gemuras? And what did they do with them? So this was coming Shem Feinas this. Maybe it is really this, maybe it's not really this, but we don't have this problem. And that it says in a lot of Chivas and a lot of Halachas for me, right? We discussed this already last time, right? That deze schrijven geen Halacha nor dan getan met dat aan ik weet was sommige zijn Halacha la masse and we think that this guy is never such a frimme wacht geen Stefasken viel de prime good so I can't call it wacht geen Stefasken so knap tedig illai and just the opposite is because he understands that the cipher is not a cipher psak if we would write a cipher for the Monam we would have to write a different kind of cipher he writes a cipher for the Chum he assumes that everyone that reads the cipher could decide himself he was right why would he have to tell you I'm right he doesn't have to tell you just give you the arguments and you'll know yourself man. You don't need his authority. We live in a world where everything is about authority because we think that we're Amaratzim. But all the people that wrote this food that we think they're authorities, they didn't see themselves out doing authority work. They're not being the authorities, they're just being the part of their smelish. It's helpful to write down. You know that some guy a few hundred years ago already had the same kasha, and you could do it all yourself. He's just helping you. He's just part of the thing. All of this like loy lifts like.
What's his having me? What's he coming to shloim? What's his having me?
That you shouldn't think that it's written for Amaratzim. You shouldn't be Amuritz when you read the cipher. You shouldn't use him. He's not interested in being the guy that you're the bright applies. Some people are interested in that, but it's a different kind of problem. He's not interested. He's interested in being a lamb. Einam's land, not Einam's land, just land. And you'll use your own cycle to decide on how to do the halacha actually. We totally don't realize that all of the sfurim that we have, almost literally all of them, I don't know, maybe if literally all, were written for Talmud Choma, not for anyone else. And we're medayik all kinds of funny dikir from the Chivas Rashba. The Chivas Rashba was never written to the Shoel. Only if the Shoel was Talmud Chacham. If the Shoel was Namuritz, he would answer a one-line answer like Brian Kanevsky. All these Pilpilim, they're because the Chivas are written to his colleagues. Because he has to convince them, because otherwise they're not going to accept him. Not because they're going to say the Heilige Rashba Geshirmat Shiva. If it would be the Heilige Rashba Geshirmat Shiva, then you wouldn't need this whole thing. It's only because the Heilige Rashba Geshirmat Shiva, even the Kong Raj himself, is not worth much. He has to convince you that he's right, that doesn't make sense what he's saying. And if you're not convinced, then don't ask like him. He wouldn't want you to. Maybe he would want you to, it depends on his, but it's not what it's about. What?
He said, just write me the psak, don't tell me why, I'm not going to be asking. Well, it's like an if so,
such a thing as it was.
No, it's like...
No, Chaim is one of the people that don't understand this. One of the big problems with him is way too modern to understand how things really work.
What do you mean?
You see that he doesn't like the Gus Ravet. He doesn't like. This was my example. He thinks that everything that Rishonim said are true. It's true. He doesn't realize that a lot of the things they said is just to convince you or to make you think something. He doesn't understand that the Torah. Yes, but he doesn't have the idea. His idea is not that he doesn't realize how fuzzy the Torah really is. He doesn't realize how plastic it really is. He doesn't know the Ramban that says that the Torah is not. There's no way to prove something. It's all opinion in that.
I think okay. I mean, okay. If the zweite student the best. I mean, okay. He can.
And then he doesn't know how to pass him because you can't just go say and I think like this. Because to him, I don't think that's actually true. I think he did paskin a lot, but I don't think that's actually true. I think that the Kabbalist actually did a lot of piskei halacha. Just he didn't have there wasn't his job, but I don't think it's actually true. Yeah, I don't think it's true. Whatever the story, but I don't.
He himself all the time.
There is psukim. I don't think that's true.
Himself, he passed him.
Not only Lechem. Yeah, also Lekel. And also Lerab. It's not true. You also pass Lerab. When they needed his name, they used his name for piskei halacha. That's very wichtig. Man hat in Zeitung gestanden, passen, der geschrieben Zeitung and say things like this. Whatever it was, from the Chilik. He wasn't. But he does have an idea that everything has to be true.
When you're saying
he does have this idea that everything has to be true. It has to be a gate. That has to work. He doesn't have the idea that everything in the end of the day is just opinion. He doesn't know that there's a difference between science and halacha. And at least true science, whatever, what the Aristotle would call science, man.
Why would you saying Allah is like a sadat?
Yeah, for the most part.
It's been building a standing by the,
Yeah.
Now, why are you calling that fuzzy?
Because it is fuzzy. There's always a reason to say the opposite. It's not like logic. It's not logical.
So why would someone say it was?
It's a svura. Also, das rieft in unserer Welt as svura. It makes sense. Nothing will happen.
But he was very into that to stand by the student.
No.
Exactly because of that. The people that have svuras, they don't understand both students. The Chazon Ish, which really didn't believe in this, never understood its second side.
Right.
And he understood a lot of students, but he always had he always thought how it should be in the end.
Like the Ramban. But Reb Chaim understood both, right? So he wasn't such an absolutist.
And there, how do you decide between both? You can't. Then
That's
you're stuck.
What saying. So what they're saying, but he wasn't thinking himself.
And then you're stuck. This is the problem, no?
So I think was that not that okay, he's very
If you're stuck, if you have two to understand both of them, and you say this guy understands the mitzvah like this, and this guy understands there's two din, and this guy understands only one din, okay, and which one is right? He doesn't even think of that, right? Because he says it's not my job to decide who's right.
This is deciding the whole day.
The Chazon Ish says, what do you mean? We're learning Torah in order to decide who's right. And the Chanami, we're not Chaz v'Shalom, but that is given to us to decide, more or less. What makes more sense? And he tries to always step around the other shit into what he thinks should be the right shit. But that's
he was like learning like of Al-Derech Gemara, like he was like in the Hemshech.
Al-Derech Ramban, yeah.
Who? Chazon Ish.
What do you mean?
The Rambam is probably really thinks like closer to the Chaim one, how the Chaim wants it to be. The only saving grace of the Rambam in this way, only that the Rambam does understand that all of Negla is only about Meichetai. He doesn't really care if it's wrong, because the main thing is that it should be a law. It doesn't really care about the details. He thinks that the Torah's details are the best, but only in certain cases, the only klulim. The Rambam has a different thing. The Rambam thinks, and this is my made-up idea, but the Rambam thinks that there's categories and laws and stuff like that, but he thinks that these are only meant in the case that they work. Only al-Rav. His way of saying it is that Kludim only al-Rav. Even Teva is only al-Rav. And therefore, all Hilchas Torah only al-Rav. He says it's referish. Sometimes the Torah could be mazik for Yuchid. It says in Chelek Gimel, Perek Lamed, something. And then you ask the Rambam, what we do then? He never answers that question. But I think that as a Lucha answer is, Perek Lamed Al, I think there's a Lucha answer that then we make an Ekimta. Then we say, that's not a case, that's not an andere case. I think that people think that would be radical. That's how the halacha actually works. But that's his way of having both a klal and a lot of yotzim and a klal. I don't think the Rambam think that you should pass him from the Rambam, you see. I think that the Rambam, and mostly is Chivas, and that's my impression. We have to think about this. I think that for the most part, the Rambam writes, the Mishnah Torah is just the Rambam organizing everything that he found in the Gemara, more or less. It's not him making psak halacha in the sense that we think of it. Although when there's a question, which is not literally the question, it's never literally the question, it's almost never, right? It's never. I'm going to make a general statement. It's never. And some people have this idea, like, there's nothing start beferish chanura. Chanuch just says all kinds of klulim, assuming a certain universe. Do we live in that world? No. So, just by default, it's never beferish chanura. At least almost never. That's missing. Yeah, of course. No, and what would the Rambam say? Besides that's the klal, and I've pushed it as a retnish when I say klal. He doesn't even have to write all these into Yeralis. Yeralis only like sometimes when he has a real problem. But he assumes that you're going to understand it by yourself. That's in the case that the Gemara was talking about. And it doesn't. There's also things like this. It says in Perek Lamed, the Torah is good for the klal, not for the yochid.
I don't remember saying that it's not negated for someone.
No. Nachamol, certain, and what here he's doing.
It's going to hurt him, finish, like what's coming on.
What do you mean? That guy should go to Gehenna? Seriously? That's what you think he's saying? He's saying, therefore, I don't have to work when I make general rules. Why would we take it in such a crazy direction? He says like this, if I would have a law that's true for everyone, then the sat of rechlish, and then we have no law at all. So we have to...
When he's saying law, he means mitzvahs.
Yeah, we have to make the klal, the chak, general. But does that mean that therefore we can't go to a roof and get a special hete? I don't see where you see that from this. Of course it doesn't mean that. The whole halacha works. Doesn't the Rambam know that the Gemara is full of ekimtis which basically do this? And then he even makes them into kludim, those ekimtis, the Rambam, whenever he could. Of course, it's supposed to be Gorosa for the Yochid. But he's doing apologetics here. He's saying, if I'll give you a klal and you say, Hasta Yotzman a klal, and a chanami, and then if you'll ask me, if I was machta b'chlal a klal, because we need to have a klal, because otherwise nothing will work. But does that mean that this yochid has to suffer? I don't know that it says that. Certain things are going to be like this, in some sense. But when there could be a hydroprotist, I don't think he's going to be action on that.
What does it mean sometimes it's not going to work? That sometimes for some people, if they're going to keep Shabbos, then it's going to...
That must be an example, of course. I wanted to... everything. I think all din akadima, all tchias, all hitra are really cases of this in a certain sense. Of course. Our halacha, the Plishim's halacha totally accepts this. Totally doesn't think that halacha is absolute. Further thing from an absolute is halacha.
Well, that's what you mean. You're talking about like early things, like in other words.
I think so. I think Kirch never durch Shabbos is something like this, and mitzvahs esa durch Lois is something like this. Kind of things like that. Yeah. You were already saying, but this is a halacha, yeah. But if we would have been fundamentalists, I think that halacha is absolute. We wouldn't have had such halachas.
Oh, so he's talking in such a case already. So not
I think so. Yeah, I think the Rambam said the Rambam's tamitzs are about the chimesh, not even about halacha. When they're about Teresh B'Ksav, and he even says I'm going to ignore all the prute halachas because that's already details or whatever. Of course. I think even. No, ner baise. I use this. I gave a Chanukah about this. Ner baise ner Chanukah ner baise is also a continue of the. In this case, the mitzvah of Chanukah won't help you. So do the mitzvah of ner Shabbos. So even of b'chlal ner baise, not only Shabbos. That was the because the Ched HaKanoim. That's one of the great examples, right?
Ched HaKanoim.
Because Chol Sivasei Hashulim. Shakot the Rambam finishes this taluch. Shakot Torah lenitne l'las Hashulim ba'olam. In other words, there's a reason for the Torah. And it doesn't mean that you should, and of course, you should generally do Chanukah, but if a Chanukah is a stira to this, you shouldn't do the Chanukah. Right? And that's even a halacha that we found in the Gemara. And you notice how easy the Gemara gave this halacha. This was something you have to realize when you read Gemara, and we read so seriously all the Gemaras. You read Gemara and you say, what if you're only not biased v'necham? What should we do? No, I think like this. I think nothing is so even close to so absolute as we think of it. But these are the things that you don't tell the Amaratzim because they're gonna, including the Leikud Amaratzim, that think that if it's not like that, then we don't have halacha at all. But even they know that in all halachas that are relevant to anything that can hurt them, they also know. This is only for like Rechaim, where it doesn't matter to anyone. Or Yerdaya, which doesn't matter to anyone nowadays, more or less. But we're rich enough. And Chayshim Mishpat Nevnez versteht jeder einer, as das right? Even the liquid bezin doesn't pass knop yaga. Ab yaga Chisra B'Lial Levin tried. Taka nicht ungenehme.
Chayshim Mishpat. You know.
Taka nicht ungenehme wegen dem.
Oh, but you're trying to make psharas?
He thinks that we should pass Lefi Adin, not Lefi HaSaychel, not Lefi all kinds of made up things.
You know,
I don't know exactly.
This guy in Posen? Is he talking about?
No, yeah, it has to do
it sounds like it.
Has to do with same Chakira, but it's different, not exactly the same thing. It's Halacha Chakira.
What do they have in Posen?
I don't know, it's the safe from this. Margolis, what do you know about it?
Who?
Margolis? You know Margolis?
No, we looked there.
It's a very interesting sefer on Chaim. It's written like a derech mechkar. He writes, he's explaining, he's been like apologizing why he's writing it like this because he wants to.
I know what you mean. Derech halimit shalab Chaim briske whatever. No, it's called.
It's called Torah. Talmud. What's it called?
Darki Talmud, that's so. Ian a Talmud. I saw this being a Talmud. Why is it so? I know.
What's the guy Posen?
I should bring them achloikus, yeah.
Ding Bus.
Macht sense.
Ding Bus.
No, he said
All these things.
Everything that you should check when you're making a shachas. It's a very good thing. It's out there from the sefer. It was a very big thing.
The Bezen of the Missing Galil, it's a good Aruf of Posen. He's around still. And he wrote in his Studa Beridim, Shemaskablim, Lefia Din, Lefia Saichla Yusha, something like that. And Afshach was Broig, on this line.
Fia Yosha. There's 29 Yosha. Fia Halacha by Yosha. What was it? Like,
this
guy makes it.
Who makes it?
This guy, that Saif, I forgot what it's called, yeah.
Which was the name?
It's not the Saif, my father has it.
What did they embalm?
This guy, at a certain point, you have that he's really a brisker. Like, he's not also like giving full.
I think could
be. He's very interesting, yeah. He has the. Eshat on achievers. That's name's like Alt Achievers. Eshat Mamish, like.
I never heard about him until this thing. I never heard about him until I saw this.
Very interesting. He's interesting. Very.
A mental part. I learned him to say for once, and he was here. He also never heard about this thing. He was like mamish enthralled. He has to get to the bottom. It's a very interesting thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I know this.
He's interesting. Very interesting.
But Chafayz came today. Gets a man the kid is as it's a secret and we shouldn't tell anyone this. I think that we still keep it a secret.
Okay. What?
I think that we still keep it a secret.
We still.
For example, I'll give you an example. If you look in, you know that, and you know this, but most people don't know it. In other words, if you would know it, would be a big question for a lot of people. I don't know myself what the answer is, but I am allowed to ask the question because I'm from the Besmedrash. Maybe we should talk about the halacha differently, right? Go to the liquid any bezin in the world and ask him how often he has to open the Shulchan Aruch.
Meaning he really knows the truth when they come from him.
No, almost none that get decided, and anything that's still in any halacha. For the most part, no. It's beer now. It's not. The one question a week that's based on halacha they put in the Ami. I'm not serious. And even those you could see that it's somewhat fake all the time, most of the time.
So they write shuvas. They have to produce shuvas a lot of times for it.
No, they don't.
Sure, I have a cousin that was in Chaim Cohen's bed, and he always asked me when I was a boch, I used to eat by him. So he always used to give me his shuvas. I should like.
The chivas are for you. They're not for the bezin. They're for the lamdim should think that they're doing something.
No,
those are part of the lie.
That's how he's being trained. He had it right, and then he's like had it on a paper.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter anything. These chivas. Of course not.
No, but there are things between the lullabies and the
almost nothing. There's almost nothing.
What is it? How did they decide? The something with the
no, it's well, most things don't actually say in the Shulchan Aruch, so they have to they mostly decide. Make it so you might as well be making everything up, which they're already doing. you at the big day and the big thing, they all have like shit things that like no shaykh. This really I think is a big problem when it's like big hack is that they're not doing anything up it. But the reason why they're not doing it is because there isn't a reason to do it. No, but he is worried about this. L'chayre there's halachas about everything, and it should be worth something. The whole idea, you tell people, you go to a secular court, you're over on Chavaisvos. What? Let's say tell people like that. What do you mean we have a Torah and it answers all the questions and so on. And then you actually ask people to do the Torah, and they tell you that the Torah doesn't actually answer any questions. If it does, it's, again, even if it is halacha, it's basically something that some achron made up, right? You have to remember this. It's not real. And made up, and achron can be someone from last week. And they say that the Chvais was not gesagt.
He said a svara. He said a svara.
Yeah.
He's saying the same thing he's saying now, that he's not authority.
Yeah, say that. In other words, what's the difference between this and this is the question that you come out with? What is the difference in this and going to the court? The court also just makes stuff up, man. Whatever. Also based on Nechten was the court gesagt. Also barely, and most of the things are. But it's not where we're doing like there's a mitzvah. We assume that something like this. The Goyish court is treif chaze. They mat the chaze. And the us steht in the Torah as the chvais was. And therefore we pass. And it turns out that nothing says, literally nothing says in the Torah about Choshen Mishpat. Even the Gemara is just made up, right? It just swears that Amron totally made up. Right, for the most part.
But they're supposed to do that. What do you mean?
But then, I'm asking you a question.
Made up is very...
Made up in the sense.
It's there on Svara.
It's not based on anything.
That's Torah. What do you mean that becomes Torah?
Okay, so, and why exactly? It just depends. It's a personal thing. Whatever person with a black hat makes up his Torah, and whatever person with not a black hat doesn't makes up his not Torah. How did it become Torah? Because it's svuras that you could see, but in any interesting halacha, in almost all interesting halachas, the questions that people debate in the Yiddish law are literally the same svuras, the same logic, the same problems that people, because that's the reality. That's the same questions in moral, even in like ethical theories. About whatever, all kinds of for example. You could go into some goyish thing, and people say the exact same lamdis, and in other words, all the svuras are transferable. You could always say the Gemara Gemant, or you could say the Seichlat. There's no difference. There's no real difference. There's no different kind of svuras. There's no different kind of, not even different kind of source. There's not even somewhere you could say, I think like this, but halacha says like this. We don't learn halacha like this. Right? We always learn halacha. The halacha says this svura, and I think that's relevant in this case, or it's not relevant in this case, right? There's almost never, not only almost never, there's literally never. There's a lot of achronim that like to talk as if it's like this. When they see you go misses, you go like, even the early achronim say this. Goyish lam this, goyish halacha is based on Seich Lanish, but ours is not Seich Lanish. Yeah, and what is it? Of course, it's 100% Seich Lanish. It even says that it's lach kamiask, but in a moment, it's Seich Lanish. And it's not even that sometimes we mold our Seich Lanish around the Seich of the Torah. We don't. Some people do. People that are learning the Torah in a very stupid way do. But generally, anyone that that's like the give a machloikis sometimes. Someone will tell you, what do you mean? The Chvais Chatzi Nezek Torah is exercisakus, but it's not really exercisakus. I mean, and the extent of exercisakus, we don't pass on it. We don't use it. The only thing that are actually useful in Shechan is a migi. A migi is somewhat whenever we pass on a migi, it's an often that which makes sense to someone. Maybe it doesn't make sense to you. It made sense to someone last year. It doesn't matter. It made sense. We use all kind of every halacha in the world. It's all about deciding when there's a buri and a shem. It makes more sense that you're right. There's nothing magic here. There's nothing that not even a pusik for all these halachas. Not even a mishnah, barely. It's not like we have a mekil from Moshe Rabbeinu that buri that Chavais was that.
Of course not.
So what is the point? So therefore I'm asking you a question. So you go and you say big drush, Rabbi say you should never go to the Goyish court because they're stam, and you should come to us, and then you come to us and you see that it's just what human beings think. So what's the difference? What's really the teretz to this kasha? I don't know what really the teretz is. It could be that really the teretz is that it's like referring to a time when the goyim don't have such a good teretz. Or it could be really referring to a question of Avodah Zarah. It could be just about assimilation or different things.
Usually there is some guy, there is some kind of... You're right, like after a while, even like why are they deciding it like this? There was a case, a famous case of Geschmacker, like there's a guy he took his life, and he had spoken on what's it called, you speak to a lawyer, they came on reveal it. What's it called?
No. Yeah. Okay.
Under whatever it is, yeah, I forgot what it's called. And he took his life. So now there's a shaila. The government wanted the lawyer to megalo this. It was very negative the government. They wanted to say what he said. So the reason you can't do it is because you're going to hurt the plaintiff. You're going to hurt the person. But now he's dead. And the other side, no. The reason why the person has is the person should talk in the first place. It's like a regular shaila. You know, saying a regular chkira. What's the shot in this?
And what's the tenet?
Whatever this guy like, can you tell us over to somebody? I was saying it's like a typical case. Now these are two svaras. Of course. First, svaras. What was the side?
Yeah. Now a lot of yes. Okay. Now I don't say that the halacha is going to be the same in the Torah, and then it could be different, but also for contingent reasons because our tradition works like this.
So we're there, but they're all talking about in which halacha. I mean, in which halacha. We're saying like as far as over there, like to know what's this law that you're not allowed to when you talk to a lawyer, whatever.
Right.
So it's well, I guess in the Torah, this is the impression I was on the target. That at one point we get to something which is passed by a bezdin, and therefore has a Torah authority.
Okay.
It is an authority. That's what I thought.
What does this authority mean? In other words, it doesn't mean what most people assume it to mean, at least for the most part. That we have it's like a mitzvah. I think that is the mitzvah. Look, that sits as that from a fish trick. I keep on using this example. It's a very bad example. And the mitzvah was look, because it doesn't really have to fish triggers. But the kids, it's a good example. Think das always do a mitzvah as when it's do a case. You should pass like that. That's how the yeshivish world ideally thinks about it in Torah. It's not about finding out who is right. There's not a thing. What do you mean who is right? Who's right? It's about meaning God and din. Now, that's the ideal that we tell people. That's not true. There's almost never such a din Torah. And if there is, the Bezdin will tell you to go to court. It's not even there's no such in the Torah.
They're trying to figure out who's right.
There's both no such in the Torah, and there's, well, that's one thing. There's number one, there's no such in the Torah. Of course, they always try. Most of it, hopefully, they try to find out who's right. And even if it's a lamlisha question, it turns out there's no such halachas. All the halachas are just.
Friedrich, I think, is the same thing.
Friedrich mentions Svura, nothing wrong with that, but it's not more than that. There's almost no mitzvahs. Maybe there's one mitzvah of Dina Shamrim. There's almost no mitzvahs in all of the Hilchos Chodesh Mishpat. Chazaka is not. We also sometimes we say there's a midah. Come on.
By Mazikin, there's definitely Pater and Talmud.
We try to make it right. There's almost no dinim, and even when they are, they all make sense. They're not. They're based on certain conceptions of what's chayav, what's not.
So I was testing the case in the beginning of Maniach. You put the thing in the person he has to look where he's going.
No.
He started telling me what they hold today. Very, very sophisticated reason. Like the ganze Sache. It's a shtickle. It's both people's fault. Is this what can?
No. So
if you when I ask, look where you're going. Right. Rav says talking about a case where it's full you fill the shraben with cotton. Right, so how you go through. Really, you take a chayiv. Right, then because all this doesn't matter. In other cases, by a corner dot, or a feila, or a laila, this and then no, a person's ball is einer derech adam's banim mitrachum. You take a potter. The person doesn't have to look where he's going. Like isn't how they would pass this in court. He told me, they started telling me, there's a thing that they look at a lot of times, they have shared responsibility. But there's a sort of the con, I should look where he's going. I don't think you have the right to put something in the bezdin. And you have to don the case. It's like very interesting how he was telling me how they go to it. It's like not so fun, Well, we have like other. I don't know, it's interesting.
No, it's true. No, it's very similar. And there's differences, and these differences are also large differences. You could think about things in very different ways. I'm not saying you can't think of things in different ways.
We wouldn't be passing up Shulchan Aruch. In this din, it's a different law. That's why they formulated different laws. A Goyish court.
Also, there's klulim, and sometimes the klulim are not correct, and so on.
Not correct. It's not RP.
Beseder. But the difference between this and that is just that happens to be that our Chachamim thought this way, and therefore they wrote this in their book of laws. That's the end of the day what the difference is. I'm not saying you shouldn't. It would be a nice, nothing wrong. I don't think that the Goyish law is somehow much more better than the Yiddish. I don't think it's better. I don't think there's such a thing as a plain logical law. It's always going to be based on all kinds of assumptions and what you think should be. What I'm saying is that it's not a mitzvah, and it's not even close to being a mitzvah. And for the most part, in the reality, the most things that people care about get decided by what the law would say. That's the honest truth. We say it's Minig Medina, and we say it's this, and we say it's that. That's the reality. Of course, there's not really a law on a lot of things, but I'm not getting into this. But most things are just decided by the Minig or by the law, things like that. And because this whole guy's ten Bezdin. In the Yiddish Bezdin, they make you learn something about the Goyish laws. In the Goyish Bezdin, they don't make you learn about the Yiddish laws, right? Because it's Negeh. In other words, it's a lot less different than you make you think.
Yeah, someone told me that a Forsha Mamish knows keys nifla all the tax. That's the book and all the tax laws. No. Because you have to go according to tax laws. So he learned all the tax laws. So one calls him up. No, I'm saying like Kvaisa. So the psak is, when he asks what he can do, he tells what it says in the book. He learned the book. So he has the book at home.
What kind of question?
You have to report this, for taxes. Like, well, people ask all these questions. So he says, let's read the laws. He looks in the book. He tells you what to do.
Man, yeah.
I was like, Jacques. You gotta tell your mom she knows, like, well, it's something he can even quote you, like, where to look. Yeah. Because
this is the teretz. I don't know what the teretz is. I think that there's totally different reasons why people even say all these things. And maybe they're even wrong. If they're right, maybe they're even wrong.
I just got a message over here. The Bezdin's still on schedule for today.
Which Bezdin?
Whatever, the house, a guy had never selling it. No, whatever. My in-laws are selling a house. My shred is selling a house, and there's a guy on the block. The guy's not unbelievable. He decided he has a din. What? I don't know what his din is. The whole thing is very funny. It's funny. They go into Bezdin.
No, what's the din? What's the question?
I think he asked my shver before when you put the house on the market, could let me know. He wanted to buy it from direct. Because my shver is not how each anything. He remembers 100 years, 15 years ago, he told the guys to do this. So I guess they got ready to do it. So they told, so they got an agent.
No.
To get it. So you told me you're going to tell me before you're going to get an agent. So okay, fine. You want to buy? You can buy. Isn't that?
No.
What's the problem? He's like, he's angry because now he has to.
It's not finished.
It's not. I will his koif and his price. It should be less. They don't know exactly. But gets to the bottom line is he call him I guess he probably thinks that he could.
We'll find out.
I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. Probably funny.
So I don't know. It could be that the real reason is not any of these things. It could be that this is just things that we tell people because we want them to come to the best. Why do we want them to come to the best?
No, it's very serious things you see from Chazal.
But how do you even read nach the Chazal? Chazal also knew that they're just doing things.
No, but it sounds like it's really there's something going on over here. It's not just. In other words, there's an acknowledgement somehow. Like you have to acknowledge.
Pink paket, but we have to rethink pink paket. Whenever something is sharper, it means it's a smaller avayra, right? The more azuris you have to make about something, the avayra is small.
You could go to my roch. There are things that you could go to Taka. There are things you go and get into. It's not 100% like it's a asigama.
That's one thing. So that's one thing. You can make it. Maybe this chimera that it says is really talking about some Bezdin shel gazlunim that really they're just gonna kill you and whatever. They don't care about anything. And maybe the American court is like that. Maybe it's not like that. That's one. It comes out. What do you mean? There's two dinim. There's the Messiah for sure talking about that. Messiah is literally the kunst of kirchnefesh, not a din in goyim and yidin b'chlal. Nothing to do. It's literally a din in tzicha or something like that. Now, the another din, of course, that's one thing that people confuse all the time. I'm just saying as a kun. It's for sure. That's clear. Anyone says that your Moiser is lying. Then Messiah is talking about mamish. The goyim was a hargan yedid that treffen was nicht to have some excuse. Fetish. That's not even a question. Now what is he talking about? I don't know. Maybe he just has an idea that he wants to be able to. I don't know. And the reality, what's the reality?
They want to acknowledge that she go to laws.
Maybe they don't want. Maybe they want to keep some kind of independence. Maybe they don't like the idea of being under the authority of this. If I was on this, not the authority, man. Maybe it's just about that, and then now what's the point of that?
No, but it could be also where you're going to get bimudrach. Like you want to be guided. You should be guided by the people of the Torah Shebal.
And then what's better about their guidance than someone else's guidance? How is their guidance better? How is it better? Maybe it's worse in some ways.
It's the chukim themselves. Maybe it's the people.
It's definitely not the chikim themselves. The chikim are literally what those people said last week. What's the difference? It's really not. In other words, in the one case a year where there's enough kamina enough, so that I said, well, you'll call me. It's not relevant for the most part. Right? It could be stam. It could be that they really think that they're right and the goyim are wrong. Then it's shalav gezaylich. There's definitely such questions. If it's Thomas Taki Gezaylich, that's not just because they really think that the Halacha is right, not because the Halacha says so.
Yeah, but it sounds like
then you're a Gazlan. If you use the court, what's the difference? Still a Gazlan, right?
Yeah, it sounds like it's a fundamental thing. You're right. Like he's saying, it comes out. It sounds like you're doing.
Maybe because they don't want assimilation. Maybe they're afraid that you're gonna become too goyish. No, well, that's a very legitimate problem. Maybe they don't want the goyim to find out that we're not paying tax. It could be so many things. Nowadays, most of the time, when people don't want things to be legal, they just because they don't want to pay tax, right?
Okay.
Is the halacha not small tax? Probably you should pay tax. Does everyone pay tax? No. Therefore, use all these slogans because we don't want to pay tax. Besides that, no. It's true, right? And it's not even a crazy idea. You could. That's crazy. What's the mal of that? It's just that you don't like paying tax. No, besides that.
They're not crazy. What? The Pata are not crazy, or the Nimshul the Moshe.
The Svura that you don't have to be the government's like Moshe. Even though I've told Yeshich Moshe Kandel Teuren. That's another thing. I don't think it has to do with any of these things. It's just that it's not good for a culture that everyone should be a tattletale. Even her bezin, you're not allowed to. If you're a dechot.
Yeah, for
example.
I think you're going to court.
No, it's very similar things. These are connected somehow in many ways, because then you go to court and you find out that the guy and the IRS finds it also. Maybe it's only about that. I don't know. Not end up, it happens. It ends up. This is Master Michal Yom, yeah? That's why people go to the entire because they wanted to keep it heimish. It's definitely part of the reality, whether you like it or not.
I think if it's going to be, it goes to
court.
If it goes to court, there's no way. They're gonna, the law's going to...
It's always like this. But was hat das zu tun mit der ganzen Jüdischkeit? Es hat nicht. Is there a real Yiddishkeit thing here? Good question. It definitely doesn't look the way it looks from the outside. It definitely doesn't look on the inside the same way. Is it Lishon Hara? Ich weiß nicht. Maybe we're not allowed to say this. Tell this time because it's Lishon Hara that I'm talking about. Maybe. Was der andere Teil?
I mean, even the laws themselves, the laws that are decided, you're saying you're going with this Hanach also. There's no laws that are decided. There's no law. Let's say Bari V'Shem Bari Adif. Do you have to go with that law? Let's say someone today thinks differently.
If it's Machayev the Bezin, but the Bezin don't. But
no, when the Baruch Shalom said that, when the Baruch Shalom gave a mandate to a Bezin,
he didn't say any of these things.
Sure, he does. I mean, the limits. He said that they should, every Bezin should be done al pi. They should do, and the whole limit Tayyag mitzvahs. That's the way they worded anyhow.
That doesn't say B'ur V'Shem over there.
No, but it said that the Bezin should take care of Tayyim V'Nitten. I don't know exactly the Lashon. It says they have to be done with Tayyim V'Nitten.
Right.
So then they have to decide what Tayyim V'Nitten is.
Could I have to find out who's right or who's better, closer to be right?
Listen, how are you going to know what to do in Tayyim V'Nitten? So therefore all the Bezin have to talk together, and when they'll go past the Choiv.
I'm not saying that this is not 100%.
I mean, Such Chesaka hat nicht das. That's not even else like this.
So I'm not saying this is not the Kavanah HaTorah.
It's the end of the day where you have to go, Taki.
Maybe it's not for different reasons.
You have to makabel the samchas of Torah. That's where you have to go. And someone who goes somewhere else does not makabel the samchas of Torah.
Okay, but it's only in an extremely general sense. And not even a general sense, an extremely like second-hand sense. Because to me, makabel the samchas of Torah means doing whatever the rabbi says. The Jewish rabbi, not the Goyish rabbi. That's all it means. All it boils down to meaning. Fragt Eid mit der Karpel und nicht der Goy mit der Achweis was. Because that's a Zeilen.
Good, otherwise that's the Torah is. The Torah doesn't do that, it's not doing the Torah.
The fact that that's what the Torah is, and that's something that most people are ready to hear. Because they need it to be a lot more. They need it to be actually, this is the Torah Zoktazoi.
I don't definitely the Torah to period. It means to say that it has to be
God said so. Let's see, take out the Torah.
It means law has to be also Chachma Torah Shabbat Peh. You might take it whole. You think altogether. You all Torah Shabbat Peh. You altogether is
100%. The whole not against it. That's what it is. All of it. Some of it is less so, and some of it is more so. But yes, for the most part.
Right, it's not more Chosh Mishpat than it is in...
It is more Chosh Mishpat than anything else, because Chosh Mishpat is noisome of Sechel Anishi. Because if you're Hilchah Sikha, at the end of the day, it's Sechel Anishi of how a Sikha should be. But the Sikha is not something that we invented.
Right, but how the should be. Over here also. The Torah is saying also, you have to do the right thing. Now what's the right thing? You
say there's some kind of difference at the subject.
There's
absolute difference. What? There's absolute difference. As we said, the Lama Zong, there's no difference. There's some kind of difference, but again, Shadan.
That's at the end of the day, this is what has to be done. I mean, it's not like a Zach. So you sound like saying two things also. You're saying number one is why people should go.
I think that the true reason, two things. I don't know if there's a true reason. I don't know. It could be that that's number one. That's one thing that's true in all halacha. Just like I said, there's no halacha and shulchan aruch that says what you should do. I don't know if it's talking about this specific situation that exists in 2021. Maybe yes and maybe not. I don't know. Right? I don't know. There's all kinds of weirdness that come out of it. It's not like so simple. Is there other system? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. Right? And that's not one thing. The fact that there's a triple or double or triple levels of justice in all these places is not a good thing. It doesn't make any sense. Is that what it's supposed to be? I don't know. Yeah, no, that there's in the reality you need to listen also to the Bez and also to the Goyish court and also to Chvayzvim your Baba. So there's two levels. Okay, I made it into three first for effect. And that's not the Tzedek V'Yosha. That's even the Bnei Noach understand that doesn't make sense. Maybe it does. It's a shal. So I told you he wrote interesting things about this. If there needs to be only one law in a country, if it makes sense, there should be different systems of law and how they interact. It's just very simple. Maybe it does make sense. But that's one question.
Who writes with this?
Alan Brill. You read Alan Brill's book? He interviewed someone that wrote a book about this. The Machlokas that I've heard.
I was just going to say, I heard the whole thing about this. That's all I know about it. I don't even know Alan Brill is
I brought that is Machlokas. The Herzog seems to think that there should only be one law. I don't remember. And therefore the Torah has to be the law of the Medina. But that maybe in some older shit as well, they don't have a problem with having in the medieval Europe they had different levels of law for different people, and it wasn't a problem. Yeah, if you're a king, if you're a zaman, it's a law. If there's a zaman, it's a law. If there's a machlokas, then you have to have a meta law to decide that. Maybe that's not crazy. Okay, it's a good question. In reality, there's all kinds of huge issues with this system that actually exists. But definitely question if that's what all these things about going to the Goyish Harkos means. Maybe it doesn't mean this. Understand? Maybe they're talking. Maybe it's literally about Avodah Zurich. Maybe they're really worried about being Avodah Zurich, like Rasha says in Mishpatim, and which is not relevant. Or maybe it's not relevant. Why the Goyish Court schwert sich in der Raum von Avodah Zurich? No, it's literally Miyakashem Alilim, not Derech Moshel, but Kipshita. If you go to Goyish Court, there's a big statue of the goddess of justice. Even in the American court, they sometimes have. This is that maybe it is just about that, and therefore all these interpretations are nonsense. That's one option.
No, but all these things are Torah.
I'm not interested in
this. He makes a bigger Torah.
Maybe you make a Torah also when you learn science. I don't know how do you know? You're so sure about things. How are you so sure?
No, there's something you don't make on. I don't know what. There's something you make and something you don't make on.
I'm not sure about this.
If I read this case I just told you now with the
yeah, I'm not sure about this.
If I read this, I take a big Torah.
Maybe.
What's up?
How do you know? You're so sure about things.
I'm saying whatever, the pashtus you don't make on it. I'm saying everything you can.
All these halachas, this exact halacha is totally made up. Yitzchak, Lori said that you do, and it's going to be just as legitimate halachas as what anyone else says. People saying for it. There's a shal in Sechtas Bruchas if you make Bechas HaTorah only on Mikra, also on Mishnah. Man, you say that. So I don't think maybe it's because of this. I don't know.
You don't make on Gemara.
Machlekes. It's not Machlekes in the Gemara, right?
Right. Rabbi says a different interesting svara why yes.
It's Machlekes. We pass there, we say everything.
But it's very interesting. But the reason why he's saying everything is not so simple, Taka.
What does it say in the Gemara? It
sounds like it doesn't sound because I don't know. It's like it's giving like a reason.
Yeah, let's see what it says in the Gemara. It says in Bruchas Daf Yud Gimel Yedalet. I have all of the Gemaras actually, just small ones. He says Yedalet. Lafikim Andam Mishnah. No, there's the Gemara quotes it, but where is this? Yud Aleph from the base. I see. The Gemara quotes it in Daf Yedalet. It says like this: Machlokes. Why not? Medrash could have the mikra, sagt Rashi. But du sagst, mikra, medrash, the mishnah, because mishnah is not based on the pusik. But ich sagt auf the mishnah. It's a parish on the psikim, basically. The Rav Maf the Talmud, zurück levarach. Ikra Rashi, you're quoting Rashi. Gets in quotes. It doesn't say why. Yeah, but it doesn't say here why. We just have Rashi to go on. Right? That's the question. The Gemara also has a question in Bruchas if din is Torah, right? Remember? When you make it in Torah, it's not clear that you have to say Bechsa Torah for din Torah. Because maybe it's just application, it's not Torah. It's application of Allah. The din haini Torah is a Gemara in Shabbos. No, it's in Rosh Hashanah.
Right, you let it answer it even. It's not considered it's considered.
Yeah, so because if you want to go on this chalikim, say it. But if you want to talk about mitzad like some kind of kedusha, I don't know. You could say that. You could say whatever you want. I don't know. I'm not so clear that all these things are so simple. Faket from here we could see that maybe the Gemara says that din. No, you know what I mean. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. Try to find it. It talks about if making it in Torah is b'chlal learning Torah.
Oh, it's also Gemara got over here. It's Gemara. There's also a Gemara right here. Then the Gemara says that by Bekerv Likim Yishbait. Shnai. Shchini Moyim. I don't see it over here. The Gemara says that the nine like the Shchini is in Moyim. So the Gemara says by Bekerv Likim Yishbait.
Yeah. The Gemara always has a difference. There's someone that learns Torah and someone that does din. That it's two different things, and we have to have different shvuchim and different ideas for what they are. That's what we see a few times.
It is. It's a
where?
It is.
That what?
Yeah, it's about the time of Dina. I skipped this line.
Shlomo Ba'almei.
Yeah, Shlomo Ba'almei. Yeah.
How come I don't find it in the?
Doesn't come up,
What's it talking about?
Put in the pasuk Kim Mitzvah Das Kel if you want. That pasuk where you can put in. I'm talking about Shchina B'neiam, Shchina Imoy. So you think not.
But But it's not clear. And the kids do outside that is Yoshlim Balma here, right? It says also on Tisha B'Av if you're allowed to pass the Torah on Tisha B'Av. Yeah, but it's like a Kamash Malon. It's not clear. The Paskin use it on Tisha B'Av that you're not allowed to Paskin. That you're not allowed. The Magnavron brings that you're not allowed to down dinner moments on Tisha B'Av, but it's not clear actually. He just made it up. The Magnavron just made that up. You see, as far as I can tell. And the mind of community that the Shechina comes, maybe nicht legabe Bichsat Torah. Maybe tak din is not. Maybe tak you don't make Bichsat Torah. Ich weiß nicht. There's also a Gemara Rosh that I have to remember that talks about was ich mein?
No, but this is the application. The Meister Shulchan Aruch when they're assigning dinim, there's some kind of dinim that have to be. They don't have to be. Let's say someone comes up now on the sides, he doesn't hold the Mitzvah Baraya.
No, what's the problem? What do you mean doesn't hold?
He holds that like the America doesn't hold like that, right? America doesn't hold that the burden of proofs on the one that wants to.
And it's more complicated than this. Halacha is maxim with some Mitzvah Baraya. That's the truth. Where at least the halacha as its paskin nowadays, very maxim with this. At the end of the day, the mechzik wins almost all the time in Bezdin, which doesn't make sense.
The mechzik?
Yeah.
That's good. That's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, no, it's not supposed to be like this. Even in halacha, it doesn't make sense. Ich verstehe this word, but it still creates a very weird world where the Grested Obed always wins, which is very not what you really want.
Why? Because the guy's coming with time. What's the problem? You have no Eidim.
Because Tfisa always helps.
Saying this year, he said, "Call. I'm in the Bezdin forever. How many years? 25 years. I never passed in the case of the Eidim."
No. So that's another example.
There's no Eidim which has mice in all the cases that come to Bezdin. There's never Eidim. No one does all the avos in front of two people. There's no one's calling. No one calls out. Listen, I'm going to do it's like never come watch.
No, of course, but item are worth for the Kenyan, for things like that, for not for the part of the Gezeile.
Yeah, they don't. People don't see usually the things that people are talking about. Find people there to come be made in Bezdin. Two kashreidim anyhow.
Not exactly. It's not all Hilchas Eidim. That's another thing, but. Man afkemina from the ganze Sach. Afkemina is no that it seems that this is Lushon Hara. Man darf ausfügen, wie sie man kann sehen, so eine Schale Lushon Hara. Understand?
Yeah, but the part even like now, you said the Magen like what's the how do people look at it? People look.
There might be different reasons. People go and say the Magen gesagt, and I'm like, yeah, the idea. I could think in 3 seconds of a fakir idea, and just as good as that.
No, but it seems like the Torah was given, like the enterprise of Torah.
And I'm also the Chachamim, sad.
Right, because the Torah was given over.
The
Torah was given to be developed, whatever, to be like the job of Klal Yisrael was to finish the Torah, like to do Torah Shabbat Peh. So the Magen is not making things up. That is what Torah is. Torah is given al das king.
Yeah, but the nafkamina is if someone comes tomorrow and he says, "I want to make it in Torah Tisha B'Av." So it turns
some chacham to tell us.
Exactly. So it becomes a minig. It becomes a question of minig for the most part. And it's a question of minig. It's upset. Because that's the reality. That it turns on that. Do we make but the Torah Tisha B'Av? Do we not? We don't because the Magen made it to a minig. So the business closed. The business closed. Upset. If it will be a shas chak, the Magen said himself. Maybe shas chak is like everything, even all of these kind of things. So upset the guy, but if not, then there's no. Understand? All of these kind of things. Most of the exactly, but he made a minig, and he was before me, so he got the right to make the minig. But it's not like he felt different. You're like, oh, shy, I guess he just changed the minig.
There's another question. How come I changed?
No, but all of this. That's why it's relevant what they said, because you want to know what the Yiddish what's mekibel. So it's mekibel. I don't know. Just look this up. I don't know. I'm sure the business closed Tisha B'Av, so it's not relevant. But let's say, I'm sure if you really need, say it because they're tired, they don't have time.
No, din.
No, I don't know about that. There is din, so maybe you shouldn't be mad with it.
Yeah, I'm saying you shouldn't be.
No, I think it just turns out to be what we do. I think it's funny. I don't know. Yesterday I saw someone write a chiva about something. A question that's totally not a real question. Like, if the question is what the minig is, says the Shalom Metzias. What kind of a funny shiva is this? The Shalom Metzias. Go check what your mother's minig is. That's what he... Kids have a dafnish, does nicht. So if you want, you could. Nothing will happen.
It's a Shalom Metzias?
Someone said, if your question is what the minig is, then it's a Shalom Metzias. You have to find it. I don't know what the minig is. Looks like some people do have the minig, some people don't have the minig. And he's like looking at it, like, if it would be the minig, then it would be a minig. A minig is just... The question was if you're allowed to put milchig stuff on a flashig counter. Cold stuff. Is that Shale? He says that some people are not to. No, you could find the raya that the B'siyas of some machlenim hold that something, if it can need a ducha, then you shouldn't do it lechatchila. That's not the guy. Yeah. In other words, if it's in a package, it has to be shayla. But even that's not a real shayla, because it's sicher mit. The shayla is not if maybe it's a mukim lachme, because you could find someone that said this would be machal. In other words, it's a practical question. Don't do it. That's all, even this they don't understand, right? In other words, yeah, if you want to, it's a practical thing. You might forget one time. So that's practical. That's not halacha. In this sense, it's a minig. In other words, you know, in the handige ashguchas, they don't give you a hechsher if you have the same kitchen for milchis and fleishiks. Is halacha? They're saying it's a new gzaire. It's not a real thing. It's if you go to the Lakewood pizza store and you buy up a bagel, they tell you not to eat it with fleishik. Why? It's not for no reason. Because it was baked in a fleishik thing, and therefore it's not bernat. You're allowed to, but. It's not milchig. It's milchig in the sense that if you cook it with fleshing, it's fleshing. It's not. Maybe you shouldn't eat it together. The Rambam said, but you're definitely allowed to eat fleshiks in the same seed. You're definitely allowed to. You're definitely allowed to eat it when you're fleshiks. This is a fetish. So why is he making you meshega? It's practical. It's practical reasons for. Maybe he's not. Maybe that's what he means to say. But. What am I trying to say with all of this? It gets and that's not relevant. All these things are not relevant. The real question is how much of everything is really a secret. That's the real question. And how could it be kept a secret, or should it be kept a secret?
What's wrong with saying this again? What's wrong with saying you say people lacking in Kabbalah? The Bible, the Torah is given al dasach hacham.
That's true, but it depends which nisach you say it. If you say this, and therefore it's Torah Messiah, and therefore you should listen to the Chum. In other words, the fact that Torah is this, now the Chum is behechlich like this. Now, and what Elamai, and love is then. The only other option is to go through a relationship and wait for a baskel. That's the only other option.
Exactly right.
There's no other option.
Right. So that's the Torah. So the Torah is telling you that's the way of the Torah. So then if you're going to go to a goyish court, like what are you doing there? Or what are you going to?
I verstehe, but you're trying to make it more. It doesn't help. It's true that that's the reality. It's reality in everything. There's no other way to make it work. How else? What else are you going to do? That's what they're trying to say. Torah Papa is nicht kann. You don't need. There must be Torah Papa, otherwise nothing works. It's not possible to write everything down. It's not even such a thing. No, but the question is what. Therefore, I think there's two things. I think therefore. And what I really think is that therefore you can't really take. I'll tell you what I think. I think that because we lost this, we got more stuck. Because of course we tell everyone that everything is Torah Messiah. The sense of a secret. The sense of a secret.
No, the sense of a secret. The sense of the fact
that there is a secret is that there is. I don't know. Second is not the word. That there's a lot of sfekes. Let's call it like this. I think because I want to generalize. I want to go back to a generalization. Most people do not understand. Like he was talking about the CDC, right? You tell them that's not a vaccine. Vaccine, yeah. This is the viele matching gehabt. Viele days. He's not mishika. He knows that it's not really true. Why is he saying this? Because he knows the second he starts making yotzim and aklal, everyone is going to be yotzim and aklal. That's how life works. People are mad at this. Also, it's one of the funny things, and I 100% agree. There's no other way to it. It's the Gesetz, madaf. Nicht, das nicht gar nicht complain. Ich habe schon gehabt, aber was gesagt? Es bringen einen Zettel von der Doktor, und dann zu reden. Bis damals. Why? Because they understand that life works like this. Everyone understands that life works like this. You can't make yotzim. Everyone's having a personal law. It's not going to work, right? And then they get mad if you tell anyone. Makes sense. Right? Now look at the same way. Not different. But now the question is like this. Now, let me continue my mushal. I'm very unclear today. If continue my mushal, we made a gazette. The gazette is of course, the guy that makes the gazette knows that 70% of the people need it. The 30% is because we shouldn't whatever. People shouldn't get lost. It's not the right? Now, since he knows this, one second. Hello. Yeah. Since he knows this, there was a siyum. No, you know the whole Masechtas. All the other Masechtas, yeah? Right, now. What? Where? Yeah, okay, I'll tell him. That's what he said? Now, if you think, if the doctor, whatever, the Rasha doctor, starts believing this lie, it becomes a very weird world. It starts being chayker. If the nuslach chok start, if the aim start at he knows that this is the Halacha. If someone asks him, Maluch Lamas, if it's needed, if it's not needed, he's going to continue with this cloud because he needs a cloud. But if he needs to take exception to the cloud, he will. And then people will find out this actually happened. Until people will find out and say, but that's what the world is stupid like this. You could watch this happening live. They look to our lines, look, they gang our lines. Of course they gang. He accepts you. Not only that, he might even expect you to understand this also. But everyone understands this. Not everyone. People that are smart enough, most people can't get this. Most people, therefore, other and that's the same problem with this with halacha. And for the most part, the people for the halacha decided that the solution to this is going to be to never give up on the lie, to always make everything chiyev, and we're never going to say that but Medaf came and again, and they get very stuck with a lot of things. That's basically the summary of my Torah. When the Chum said things like this, look, you'll push it to the wall. We'll say called the Mekadosh Adata, the Rahuna Mekadosh, and Mafkid the condition. What, when, where? Yeah, we can. But nowadays you're not allowed to say that because then the whole thing becomes a joke. But it only becomes a joke because you told this to everyone, and now they all hear about this. Well, you don't have to tell them. You have to say something else and shine. To find out what's the correct lie.
You're saying.
I'm just saying that we should never have let anyone into a Medrash, and then we would have had the ability to do what we need to do. Now that we let everyone into a Medrash, it's a big problem. Adam Gamliel might have been right. At least you have to find a solution to this problem, that people do not get subtlety. Nobody can accept this. Yes, and who decides when nicht? Me. Or nobody buys that. They don't buy it because their mind can't have any like gray. Or the other nine. If you have something like this, what did Lamnim say? Yeah, I can accept that, but you have to give me an exact gate, the when nicht alamon. I don't have an exact gate. Sometimes
right, you're saying now you have to get to say
all of halacha is like this. I have more nice of halacha is like this. It's not right? What does it mean? Basically, right? What does it mean? I worked hard for you to make this mittich. Right? That was the chum are the ones making the thing mitter when it's a little bit of or whatever. And when they don't have to, they have praktisch item. Why you want me to use my heter? And a pilam this doesn't make any sense. Either the heter works or it doesn't work. It works when I want it to work. When I don't need it, why should I use it? That's really what's going on. There's so many things like this. More digmois. And you have to realize this.
Yeah,
the Lamdim say that this shows that bittul does not a real thing, and but if that bittul is a real thing, the pasuk say we could be battle because if there's such a let's see if it's really taka it doesn't exist, then say it then. But if it is nicht, so sachakel we stipped it a bit. So why would I? It's like I stip you around into the I'll give you a license for you could take a license. So why should I?
Something can be soymechan. Something can be soymechan. You don't be soymechan. Don't be soymechan.
So, but I'm asking you, how does this make sense? How do you understand it? How do people understand it? It's like people don't. By the way, in the yeshivas they don't think about these things. It's a state touch to better. Explain what's going on. What's going on is this is the heter that the rabbi gave you, but the rabbi is Not saying that it's really like this. It's why should I? Why should I work hard? Why should I use up my points? And I don't know how to. Why should I use up my protection? It's basically like this. I can't make protection. Therefore, you should always make protection. The Ken's kind of the normale thing, right? That's basically what it is, right? So it's mitte Russe. It could be made mitte, but I don't want to use up my credits for that.
It's just saying it's a svara to be matter. Why should you even use a svara to be matter? If you can have
it's not really it's more of a, it's not only a svara, but it also needs the roof or the chachamim, the rabbis to actually do it. And they're taking some sort of risk. In other words, they're it's kitli model that's taking a risk. Not they're pushing it because they understand that you need to eat, right? But if you don't need to eat, you can't just ask morgen. So what do you want from me? Why are you asking me for a hat? There's always a shoyl of initial, even in klulim that we have from the times of the Gemara. There's always a shoyl of initial, and I think Ayvat Leis is a very good example for it. Because the whole reasoning is tomorrow it's going to be mitte. What do you want from me? If Friday I took that's the and the Chaname, they say if it's a big tzorich, then maybe we are. If the this Tosis says, I think if about Yom Tov, right? If afterwards can be ruined, then we don't say. I'm talking about not Ayvat Leis. I'm talking about the V'shesh Lematirin, right? A similar thing, but. I'm confused. Tomorrow it's going to be mitte, right? Yeah. If tomorrow it's going to be ruined. I'm confused. I'm saying the wrong thing. But it's also based on the same idea, because it comes out of this idea that it's not really mitte, so you can't go do it. If it happened, but Bekitzer. No, that's the Maskuna. I don't know why we got to this whole thing. It's very messed up here.